the June 11th Executive and Finance Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Carroll. Here. Reinish.
Here.
Gill.
Here.
Glassburner.
Here.
Kirk.
Here.
Frank. Williamson.
Here.
Dewey.
Okay. Nobody for invocation, correct?
No, sir.
Pledge of allegiance. Mr. Kalish, you got allegiance with that, please? Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on. Verification, open meetings law compliance.
For the meeting is properly noticed.
Properly noted. Agenda approval. We have one request to move item 12 after item 6. Otherwise, we will continue on down through the 25-point agenda. Item 12 after item 6. Looking for approval of the 25-point agenda with the one change.
Sir, where are you getting 25? I have 22. Am I on the wrong
You
one?
just want the county board agenda with any changes?
Well, that's what I was. How did I
Right.
get? What I clicked on.
It's always a good day.
June 11th. Executive and Finance. Executive and Finance. 22 on this one. Same thing, whatever. That's right. When did we ever do the pledge? Anyway. We go back and move 12 after public comment, still moving it after 6. So, there, let's go back to that 22-point agenda. Mr. Manning had made a motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Turk. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, same sign. All right. Agenda approved. Minutes from the May 14th meeting. Any additions, corrections, changes? Otherwise, I would approve them as presented. Moving on to item 6, public comment. Anyone from the public? Carol's falling asleep on me already. All right, let's go to item number 12 then. Discussion, possible action, review of strategic plan. Administrator Pesh.
Okay, so we had kind of talked about reviewing the strategic plan. There's, do you want to bring? So I was able to locate the action items from the prior strategic plan. I don't have my glasses, of course, so I can't see it because it's so small. Thanks, Larry.
The screen's not much better. Don't make this big as it.
Oh, God, Larry.
Yes.
Okay, look, I'm strong. And so I went through and highlighted on my copy the things that we are actually in process of doing. And it turns out that we have a lot of these in process or kind of covered. So with that too, I went through the strategic plan framework to see kind of where we were and what the prior goals were. And if you look at the focus of the strategic plan, it was defining problems for the Richland County Board of Supervisors is the need to choose which services and enterprises it will financially support. And the business of the county, and it says the primary causes of the county's financial issues stem from an inability to make hard choices and focus its effort through intentional action. It must choose which discretionary services to abandon while simultaneously investing in community and economic development efforts to grow its population, community, wealth, and tax base. So this was, I think, before the shared revenue. And that was a philosophy. So I think we really almost need to go back and reestablish what we think our goals are going to be going forward. You know, the organizational goals, create finance, HR, and maintenance department. Well, check, we've done that. I got the draft procurement policy back from Andy Phillips today. So that's another goal we can check off. We're doing really well with that. evaluating the needs of an enterprise resource planning system. We've got that on the agenda today. Biannual review of committee structure with the possibility of consolidation. We have taken care of that this year. Evaluate the concept of merging departments within the county. We have actually done some of that as well, with probably more to come. Improving financial practices. That's something that we are addressing. Workforce growth. You know, I think then this is where Tessa will come in to speak to the goal of evaluating wages and the market and all of those things. And that's really what we've been working on all day today, because we have had Tessa Melvin here from DDA to talk about our wage study. So I'm going to pause and let her present her piece, and then we can continue on with the strategic discussion. Yep.
Don't be shy.
So yeah, today we met with all of the employees, we reported, we met with department heads to kind of explain what the process is going to be, kind of what their role is in the PAQ review, so we can update job descriptions and get those going. I think it went very well. There was a lot of feedback of, you know, well, the last time it didn't. That's helpful. Also, just in some of the discussions, like Candace said, with departments kind of restructuring, what that will look like. So tonight, I'm just kind of giving kind of an overview of what we're seeing in the market. So as of today, we have all of your benchmarks already collected. We're going through those and starting to kind of analyze. So I don't have data for you tonight, but I wanted to have some discussions about like the next decision points and kind of that piece. So, sorry. You can go again. And just for those of you who don't, I think I met quite a few the last time I was here, but I know there's been some changes. I am from David Drum, so David Drum created the company 20 years ago, civil engineer. We started doing HR about 7 to 8 years ago. So we do executive recruitment, class and comp. And like I told employees today, one of the big things that's different, we all have worked in the public sector. So I was a city administrator in county. So I think that helps when we're looking at what we're doing, because we actually understand the roles of the staff, of the board, and just what that looks like. So this is just me. I lead this area, 15 years in city and county before coming to David Brown. And I also have a doctorate of public administration. And Kelly Jones is kind of my data guy behind the scenes, collecting the market analysis and kind of doing all of that. So the why, part of it is the duties that have changed. Some people have job descriptions, some of them are super old and they've just morphed into other things. So that's kind of one of the priorities. Changes in organizational, like Candace said, when you restructure, those job descriptions are going to change just because of the services and that. But the biggest one on here is the recruitment and retention. The labor force is just really volatile right now, in meaning that there is shortage, and when we have an opening, less people are applying. Of those, less are qualified. So kind of dealing with some of those issues and how do we be proactive instead of reactive all the time, but also being fiscally responsible. So the project, today we have the employee kickoff meeting, so then they will have their job description and complete this position analysis questionnaire. They'll have it, they'll send it to their supervisor has a piece to complete. Then it goes to the department head to add input on there and comments, and then Candace, and then it comes to me to rewrite. I write it, send it back and say, did I get it right? If yes, do nothing. If no, complete a job description and field form to let me know what I missed. Then we'll continue the market analysis and we will classify the jobs into like the grades you have to determine pay. At that point, we'll send the job descriptions back and say, here's where you are sitting to the organization. Here's your job description. Is anything missing or warrants another review? You cannot say, I want more money, or I should make what Joe Smith is making. That is not an appeal. It has to be related to the job description. And then working on implementation with the board and how that cost will be for year 1, year 2, year 3, what that looks like. So one of the questions I always get is, what are you seeing kind of in the market right now? So the big one is retail positions, entry level, are pushing at that $18, $20, $21 an hour rate. So those are pushing like your entry level positions to be competitive. Before that wasn't not an issue because there was such a gap between them. We're definitely seeing that kind of pushing up the pay grids on those entry level positions. The labor shortage, like I said, or when you have an opening, less people are applying. And then all those that are applying, if it's a technical position that requires a licensure or certification, even less people. Increased turnover in the public sector, there are just more people leaving, not just for retirement, but just being done or whatever that looks like. That was not anticipated. And then, as you know, as you're doing this study, so are other entities. So it is a snowball effect. I know you'll never catch up because there's always some movement, but what you want to do is be at a place that you're comfortable with and then maintain that within a variation of percentage. That's our kind of goal for this. With the ongoing maintenance that the board agreed, you never want to have to go through one of these again entirely and have a wage deficit. Instead, every year we'll look at it, maybe make some minor adjustments, but it'll be minor budget disruption so that you can maintain where you want to be. You could be competitive, but it won't be a big cost. So these were the benchmark entities that we're using. So as we look, we'll look at all of those, and we have all of them today except Green Lake. So that's the only one we're still missing, and we will get them. But just so you know that we've been working with them to their rosters and their jobs and all of that information. So all that will have that information. When we do it, we do average it out. So we don't throw out something if it's, you know, higher or lower. If it's something that's an anomaly, that's just not a good fit, then we'll talk about that. But that's part of what the benchmark group looks like. So as I said, we just kind of started doing this. I don't have like exact numbers, but some things that we're finding is of your positions, you have quite a few, a big portion of your total population that are below that $20. So you have about 425 employees. That number's wrong, but you have 90 that are kind of making below that $20. So that would be a concern or like a red flag. Some of them are very seasonal, and that might be why, but I highlight that because that's my concern is the underpayment and the disparity at the low end. 11% is between your min and max. So if my min is $20, it's 11% higher for my max. That's pretty tight. And right now what we're seeing in your benchmark is about 18 to 20% between the min and the max. Again, those are preliminary numbers, but just something to think about. And of your current grid, a lot of positions are starting at step 3, step 4, just for hiring. So that just means that the system isn't doing what it was intended to do because of the market. So the big question is the pay philosophy. So as I said before, the data tells you where you currently are to the market. The board's decision is to kind of say, where do we want to be and how fast do we want to get there? The pay philosophy is based off of, kind of your competitiveness with the benchmarks. You may look at those benchmarks and say, we really only care about these 10, and we're going to be the average of them. Textbook will say you should be within 5% of market average. So that's what the textbook will say. I will say right now with the labor the way it is, you should be at average, if not slightly higher. That just means you're definitely not the top and you're not the bottom. You're just sitting right in the middle of your benchmarks. And as your benchmarks, a lot of them are very similar in your size. You do have some that are bigger. We don't expect you to be the top paid one, just kind of sitting in the middle. So the reason I kind of just wanted to bring this up, because this does have to do with your strategic planning in your financial, like how you're planning and how you're going forward. And I always get the question, so when do we make decisions? When are the board's milestones? We'll be finished with our market analysis soon. We'll have those job descriptions and kind of start doing some budgeting. But the next discussion point will kind of be this pay philosophy of where do you want to be to the market? Is it at market? Is it 5% below? Is it 5% above? Is it a market average? Is it a percent of specific ones? Some counties will say we want to be in the percentile, so like we want to be in the upper quartile. That's another way of looking at it. It's really how you look at your benchmarks and you say, how does Richland look in comparison to, or who do we feel we're best represented by? That is like that pay philosophy. So if you come back and say, we're going to be at market average, great, then we'll look at where that puts you. How fast you get there, we're planning 2025 implementation, but that doesn't mean it will all be implemented on day one. Meaning it might take us 2 or 3 years to get to where your desired pay philosophy is, but we'll go with the finance and work on something that is cost effective and fiscally responsible. So that might be a multiple year implementation. Yep.
So you've got counties from Ashland, Bayfield down to Iowa Green. Our problem is, as I looked at the counties that surround us, we are half the size of everybody that surrounds us.
Mhm.
So when you say the 5% above or below or at, how are we in comparison? I'm more concerned about the ones that surround us because we have people leaving and going to a different county.
Yep.
And they're all twice as big as us.
Sure. And we can separate those out too, so we can see just where those are if you want. If you help me identify the ones that you want pulled out. What we'll do then is say, here's the benchmark average, and maybe here's what I'll call the spotlight average to say of the 5 that surround you, if that's the number, here's where you sit to them. Because that might be the pay philosophy. I'm just throwing this out, so don't record this. If you came back at 20% under market, you might say, that's great, we want to be 10% under the spotlight because they are so much bigger, but we know we can be better than where we're at. So that is exactly, that's a great way to look at pay philosophy. And I can, with the data, we can cut and slice it so you can see the whole benchmark and then just those specific 5, if that's the direction of this. That's why we're kind of having this discussion now. So I don't go ahead and do all of this and then you come back and I have to do rework. Now I can kind of keep plugging along so you can make decisions with the information that's presented.
But you have to remember, if they're twice as big as us, they probably have more tax capacity and larger
Right.
budgets.
You know,
So that's
kind of,
right. So that's where we're gonna have to take a look at all of that and decide, okay, where do we want to be? What can we afford? Or if we want to be higher than where we can afford right now, then how do we create a strategy to get us there?
Yep.
And those are all discussion points and all things
I
that
don't think we can ever be at average. I really don't, just for our location. You know.
Yeah, well, I think you'd be surprised because some of the smaller ones bring that average down. Do you know what I mean? Because remember, you're talking about counties that are a little bit smaller than you, same size, and then bigger. So the averages, I think you'd be a little bit more surprised of where you sit.
I hope I am. This is only my second term. In my first term, that's all I said is we don't pay enough.
Right, and it is not every single position. So we're not done. I'm not saying anything that should be recorded or used against me, but there are some definite variations between jobs. And that's just because of your system's age and the industry. The industry values some jobs a lot higher today than they did 5 years ago because of what they need to do in their job and just what's happening in the world. But no, that's perfect. I will slice it and present it that way to help.
So when you're finished your study, come back, we will get comparison with these counties, whether it's a spotlight or not.
Yep.
But you also apparently need to do some kind of alignment of job descriptions with other counties that may do things differently.
Yep.
So you'll explain that and how easy or how impactful that is.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So like I told employees today, how is a pay grade calibrated? A pay grade should be calibrated by 3 things. 1, updated job descriptions. That's exactly why we're writing the job description. So we know the service level here, when I look at another county, is it the same, is it not? Second is internal equity. So look at how you're structured. You have a set limit of department heads. Some counties have more department heads than you. Some have less. So those service levels are different. And then the last thing is the market competitiveness, is the wages. So those three things help calibrate the pay grid once the board decides a pay philosophy of kind of where they sit. So once I write the job description, I look at the market and say, if it's a social worker, this is a social worker job description. Here's where the market is. Are there outstanding factors? Yes, child protection is one of them, and how they pay. We kind of then classify the job, to your point, internally, looking at specific job content factors that makes it just specific to Richland County. So then we'll also say, in Richland County, a social worker is equal to a X. They might not be the same job, but because of the job, the comp worth they call it, they are similarly based on what's needed for the job and the jobs that they do. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay. And these are the content that I use, and like I tell the employees in today, it is about the position and not the person. So you might really like Katie, but you don't like Jim. I don't really care. I just care about the position. I always say I write them and classify them as if everyone won the lottery and we're hiring for tomorrow. So what's needed in the position, not what they bring. So an example of that is I have a doctorate degree. When I was a city administrator, I'm not going to get paid for that because it's not required. It's not going to be in my job description. It's just something I bring. I'm also a TIG welder and can weld for the highway department. I know, right? I know, I got some scars to prove it. I used to weld for Harley Davidson, so. But again, you would not write that job to show that because you would be very hard to find a city administrator that can weld. So again, it's just something I bring to the organization. So when I look at a job description, it's what education experience is needed, not what you have. Decision-making of how the decisions they make impact their work, their division, their department, the whole county. So I do look at departments by budget and some of those factors. Problem solving, relationships, so who do they communicate, what are they communicating, like that level. Effort, both mental, so accuracy and deadlines, and physical. And the last one is working conditions. And I spent a lot of time talking about working conditions because having worked in the public sector, I would not say there's a job in the county that is great. Because you have to deal with the public. Do you know what I'm saying? The people that are coming in, the personalities and all of that. So we do look at that when we're looking at that, as most counties should. But some consultants say, oh, you're inside, great working condition. Okay, you come to the front desk and you handle so-and-so when they come in. I'm sure you have frequent flyers at the county that come in on a regular basis.
We don't have that.
Yeah, no. And so what to expect, I am not here to do job loss, reduction in pay, or org structuring. I made that very clear with the employees. I'm really here to tell them where you are to the market, to write those job descriptions, to make sure it's transparent. They will have a lot of time to look at it and provide feedback. That's kind of like, I just wanted to provide it, and I love the feedback that you gave me because that will help us cut and slice the data so you guys can make decisions. And as you go and think about other planning, if there's other things that matter, let me know and we can pull that and organize it different compared to what you are looking for. Yep.
Maybe a question for you, Candace, but in terms of the job descriptions, I mean, it's a snapshot in time. So I'm just wondering, do you feel like for now, we've gotten department organizations and work responsibilities where you want them for a while?
I think it'll always be a work in progress. I know there are some department heads that are looking at making additional changes. And what I've said kind of because we met specifically with the department heads today as well, is go with where you're at right now. Because we're not going to combine restructuring with this right now.
Yeah.
So, and we know that things will always evolve and change. And so that is where the maintenance plan comes in, because with this also is every year we're going to be looking at a third of the jobs.
Speak to that.
Yep. Yeah. So every year we'll take a third of the jobs and we will look at them, do a snapshot with the market. if anything has changed significantly, so a duty 20% or more of the job has changed, then that would warrant another look. If, you know, you send the PAQ or the job description to the employee and they say, nope, nothing's changed, this still, it looks good, okay, great. Then it's really just looking at the market to see where that pay falls. But Tessa also looks at the entirety of the roster every year. And if someone has fallen below our target, whatever that is, whether it's 5% below the market, 5% above the market, if they fall significantly below, even if it's not their year to be reviewed, we will pull them then, because we don't want to wait a year or 2 years to have them get even further behind in the market. We don't want those large adjustments. We want to make those small adjustments to people's jobs. Or if somebody has a significant change in duties, let's say they decide that so-and-so is going to be a lead worker rather than a line staff. Well, that's an immediate reclassification look, because we're significantly changing their job duties.
Which is similar to what we were doing with the old wage study we had, where occasionally we've decided we needed a new job description role, like you're saying, and then we'd send it off, whoever it was. They would come back with an assessment.
But you didn't have a consistent review of all jobs, so it was whoever whined the most came to the board. Unfortunately, if you have whiners, I don't know. But that's typically how it works. I always say the ongoing maintenance is just like you guys do in the highway department with your pavement improvement plan. You look at the road surface every year, you do cracks, fill, seal coating, all of that to maintain it. Well, your employees are your greatest asset, but they're your biggest expense. So if you can maintain and do a little budget, it's better than waiting 10 years and have to do a complete reconstruct, because that's millions of dollars and it causes pain for everybody. So minimal is what we're trying to go after, so that you always can kind of stay where you want to be.
And to highlight that, so the last time I did this, the initial adjustment to make everybody whole, and we did it in one swoop. The department heads found the money and it was $1.6 million to correct everybody. But then after that, typically it was, you know, anywhere between 30 and 150,000 to adjust, because it was usually very, very minimal. I think the most adjustments we did in a year after that were 5 jobs, and it wasn't huge adjustments. It was
But you
minor.
did a pay grade recalibration.
We
to
did.
Say, hey, your whole pay grade, everyone else around you did an adjustment, unfortunately, and it moved. So we're gonna cut one step, add one step. So that's a minimal disruption, because it only impacts those that are at the top, but it corrects your issue immediately. So that was 1 year where it was a little bit more expensive.
Yep. And that's
But you-
about 267,000 is what
Yeah.
that was that year. And it saved us in the long run by being outside of the market and having to play catch up. We got ahead of it that way. And so that's where it's really important to look at that market year over year, see what our comparable counties are doing for market adjustments, if they're doing, you know, kind of a cost of living adjustment every year, things like that. And that's what we're going to implement and start doing within this plan to make sure we maintain that competitiveness and that consistency.
Mr. Renich, question.
We talked about, base around here is $20 an hour. How do we factor in, benefits of like insurance and vacation? How is that taken into account?
So I'm not looking at that. I'm just looking at the wages, because there's 2 reasons for that. One is it's really hard to look at just apples to apples because of health insurance plans are so variable. And the second is I want the board really to focus on the wages and make a decision of where you want to be to the market and not get stuck in the weeds, because benefits don't matter the same to everybody. So you may say, wow, we offer great benefits and we could be under market. If I'm someone who's new and single, I'm invincible. I don't need my health insurance. I just want money in my pocket. If I'm a new mom, I care about my health deductible, because by January, I'm through it. So very
Some people
different.
care about vacation, you
And
don't know.
Exactly, and it all varies, but I know Candace is dedicated to looking at some of those things too. I just say that wages are what you can do apples to apples, and it matters the same to everyone. All of those others are benefits, but they just matter different, and then health insurance is a beast of its own.
And that's why, so I've got 3 consultants that I'm meeting with regarding health insurance this year to look at not just health insurance, but our package as a whole, an EAP, you know, looking at some telehealth options that we may have for our employees, just benefits that we don't currently have in place. Additionally, I know we need to look at our sick and vacation rates, because even though they were tweaked a couple of years ago, they're not comparable to other counties.
And you
Our
can do that like in year 2 with your ongoing, because we contact your benchmarks every year for updated roster. So if that's something you want, we can collect that data at another year.
Yep.
But I would say this year, focus in on the apples to apples, and we can help pull some of that data.
Yep.
The other piece of the nice thing that we do with the market every year is staffing. So if you have a department head that comes and says, I need 10 new staff, we can actually show where your numbers are in relation, which can be helpful to actually make some decisions based on metrics versus just a shot in the dark.
data-driven decisions. I've talked about that a lot since I came on board, and this will give us data to help us make some of those decisions that we need to make. So it's more than just the pay philosophy, but it falls in line with a lot of these efficiencies and a lot of the things that roll in with our people component of our strategic plan as well. Any other questions?
Just one, a statement that I think Candace Ortesa can allude to, that there could be people that are they're above, way above market, that may be froze for a while. So people need to realize that could happen.
Yeah, and we talked about, I mean, because everyone is really concerned. When am I going to get implementation? When am I going to get the check in my pocket? What will that look like? Well, we don't know what we know until we don't know. But what we've been telling people is if you're above market by that much, generally you get froze until the market catches up to you. What we're trying to do is we're trying to fix those disparities that are under market first. And those people that have been here 30 years and you're on step 8, that does not mean in the new system you will go right to step 8. You will move into it at the step closest to what you're currently making. That for employees is really hard to swallow because it hurts my pride. You're not valuing me. Well, actually, I don't know when the pay grid went off the chart. I don't know when it did, so I can't correct it. Also in 2008, when there was a recession, we didn't take money from you at that time. So you can't ask for it and then expect it all in the same. It is the fairest way is to put everyone in closest to and see where we are with the finances. That's what we typically do. I do tell employees that you should think full picture. If an employee is making $15 an hour, they should get an increase that's going to be bigger than me if I'm paid where I should be. Also, if you're looking at retirement, if you even have another step or two, that adds to your retirement. So think big picture, not immediately. Not everyone is going to go home with the same increase because not everyone is right where the market is either. So we're trying to right the wrongs to get everyone fresh new pay grid closest to the market.
And one of the other things we said is, you know, if you are paid well and you're above market or right where you should be, you've been being paid that way the whole time. None of these other people get to go back and recoup all that money that they should have been making. So again, you know, that's something, and we talked about that in every meeting today, that it turns out, because I had people that were very upset that they didn't get an increase. Well, technically you were paid over the market. We didn't say, oh, you're paid higher than you should be, so we're going to take $5 an hour away. We said, we're going to let you keep that until the market catches up with you. And so those are the discussions we're going to have. And there are going to be people that are going to be unhappy. That is the nature of this beast.
I will never run for public office because I have people that are mad at me all the time. But my job is to do, my job is to do what the board hired me to create a wage that is equitable and fair. And then implementation that's fiscally responsible. Because I said in the other piece, if we did all of that by longevity, and we said, here's your $5 an hour, we're going to take $8 an hour to pay for your taxes. That's not fair either. So we have to be fiscally responsible with how you.
I just got a comment. I got a call not that long ago. I wish more citizens would watch like these meetings because the comment was taxes have been going up year after year. When the hell are they going to start going back down? So maybe they'd want something like this, they understand.
Very good job so far, Tessa.
You tell them, if you know that answer, you wouldn't be doing this, you'd be selling bonds and stuff.
Oh, give me your number, I'll help you.
Simple answer is when your household income starts going down. Your household expenses, when they go down, yeah.
All right, if there's no other further questions for Tessa, is she headed home?
Well, he's free to go.
Free to go. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Tessa.
Good update.
Okay, so
Are you done with
with that-
strategic planning?
well, no, I'm not done because this is a topic that Ingrid wanted on here. So I wanted to hear what Ingrid wanted to say about this topic.
Putting the blame on me. No,
Oh, it was good. We needed to
yeah,
have.
we do, and so this was supposed to be through the end of 2024. I think that it's just important that we keep looking at this and that we look at updating it. I know, and this is addressed to our county chair. I know when you spoke about why you wanted to run, you talked about moving us as a board into being more visionary, and I think that this really plays a part in it. I felt like in the last process, I think the board overall and the administrator did a really good job of taking what we were saying and look at that now and look at how much that directed where we moved on from there. And as Candace mentioned, we had a lot of changes since that last strategic plan. It was before we had the increase in shared revenue. We were in a much bigger budget crisis, so it really framed the way we were looking at it. Things have shifted a bit since then, so I think as a board, we need to shift then what is our vision and what is our focus for the next 3 years, and how are we going to create a roadmap for not just our current term, but the next term of board supervisors that come on to keep moving forward. And I think that's a really big part of our job as county board supervisors. So I think historically, the strategic plan hasn't been as important to people. I think that it needs to be more important in the future. So that's just my plug for, please, let's make this a priority. I don't know if that would be this specific board or if we need to make another committee for that, but it will need to get addressed.
Oh, and if I may?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I think that pending the outcome of our feasibility study, that is coming in July, I think that also may drive some of our priorities and what we're looking at, the results of this wage study and the fiscal impact that that may have. I know we have a new, emergency manager / ambulance service director that has some ideas of improving that service to our county. So again, I think there may be some other things at play. So I do think it would be good to revisit this and start thinking about, okay, what does this now look like and what does it now mean?
Anybody else with questions, comments on our current strategic plan? Anything else on that?
Well, and what I can do is I can get this document and try to color code it now, what is done and what is still outstanding, and get it in a bigger font that we can actually read. And then we can bring it back.
And if I may, I know on the administrator page, it has a link.
Yep.
The strategic plan and the work plan, so then
Yep.
if it's updated there, then we just all have access to it at any
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, the work plan that's there isn't even color
I
coded.
don't even think it's this current, so.
No, I found this one after a lot of digging through a lot of different versions. I was like, oh, there is one. So yeah, we can work on getting that done.
Good ideas. You ready to move on to number 7 then? Resolution approving purchase of finance, payroll, and human resources software from Tyler Technologies.
Now, I know you all approved this last month, but after some initial engagement with Tyler and some additional engagement with staff to make sure that we had everything that we needed, we had to add a couple of modules, which did make the cost go up. It was about $13,000, Larry? About $13,000 difference. It's not a huge difference, but I still wanted to be honest and transparent. I will say that last week we had another demo and we invited, every department that this would touch, and It was an overwhelmingly positive reception. There's a lot of excitement surrounding this product and what it can do. And actually, we found out it can do even more than we realized. So the budget software is amazing. So this is just an update to you before we take it to the full board, that the total now has shifted to implementation, one-time fees, $250,173. And recurring fees are $107.98. So,
What's the file we get?
oh no, I have the old one. I'm sorry. 109, I think is. Yeah. So,
Do you want a new resolution with a new dollar amount?
we just have I think we had the not to exceed, correct, Derek? So we need the not to exceed the new amount listed.
Motion by Manning,
I'll second.
seconded by Miss Ingrid. Any discussion on that, Mr. Carroll?
Of course.
Good.
Now that we've seen the actual proposal, I do have one more question. Is their annual price based on an assumed number of seats or it's not?
Unlimited.
Well, that's good.
Yep.
And then, they don't really have a schedule. They have an example schedule in their proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming you guys looked it over to figure out what you think the schedule is. I'm just concerned when I look at all those responsibility matrices down in there that, there's a lot of tasks for the county to do.
Mhm.
And I'm just assuming that you guys have looked that over and we have the capacity to do that when it needs to be done.
Yep, no, it's, not gonna lie, it's gonna be painful. I've warned everybody that it's going to be painful. Implementation is never fun. It's a lot of hours. The one great thing is, all they do is counties. So they have worked with data transfer, they've worked with file upload, they have worked with all of that.
AS400s.
Yes, in other counties, we are not going to be reinventing the wheel here, which is wonderful. And things will happen in phases too. You can't implement certain things until other things are done. And so, we understand that there is going to be, a higher level of work expectation for a while, and we're ready to do it, aren't we, Derek and Larry?
We are ready.
We're ready, because it's worth it in the end. And
I get it.
that's really where it's at. And we are doing a lot of work already on picking up the GL in preparation for the implementation. So, yeah, we understand the volume.
Anybody else with questions in regards to the Tyler? So the dollar amount, what is it, I wrote down 251,173. Do we want to just round it to 252? Or what, do you want the exact amounts in there, or what do you think?
As proposed.
Oh, the dollar amount.
Just way ahead, because I was looking at the requirements.
I can, while she's looking for that, Grant County is using it. And there's glitches. That's somebody that was paid $119,000 monthly.
Well, they also didn't have a finance director doing implementation.
True.
So let's be transparent about that.
Yeah. You have dollar amounts?
So you've got to add these two together, 163 and 119.
So are the new updated numbers then on page 19 of that 87 document?
So 280, 2888.
Choose estimate on page 19.
It's on page 4.
Exhibit A.
Well, it says page 4 of the document, but on our iPad, it's page 9.
So 280, 288.
So no, 283, 283.
We'll round that one to 283, not to exceed 283,000. The maintenance, yearly maintenance is still around that 109, is what I wrote down.
Where are you getting that number? That was my question, because I see 301.
Initial year is 163,505 plus the 119. Then if we pay 2 additional years at the 120, that's another 240. But we were talking, in the last document, we only had for the initial implementation. If we want to do the whole thing, but we approved entering into the 3-year contract before.
And I think we had discussion, didn't we, on that, going ahead with paying a 3 year.
So we got
Lock it in.
the discount. So the initial cost was X with entering into a 3-year contract.
So 283 is correct and 109 is correct.
119.
119. We'll say 120.
Yep.
There, so we have the verbiage. Not to exceed $283,000 or $120,000 in annual maintenance within the 3-year contract.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
I wondered if, Mr. Wendell had a chance to look at all the Ts and Cs. Was there anything funny or concern?
Not in the Tyler contract.
Okay.
I did have a chance to review that.
And it is Sourcewell as well, which is, the statewide approved contracts.
Okay, we're ready to vote? All those in favor of the 283 and $120,000 signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, no. All right, that has been approved. Moving to number 8. Resolution approving 2025 capital improvement plan.
So this is pretty exciting,
You may need a hard copy.
right, Larry?
That looks better than what I got. Mine didn't fit correctly. I'll take one.
It's okay.
So we'll wait till everybody gets a copy
I
and
think it cuts it off in our.
You sure do. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so the trend of short-term borrowing started, how many years ago, Derek? And it was supposed to be kind of a Band-Aid for that year and turned into an every year thing to fund our capital programming. And that's really not how we should be operating. We should have a fund to draw from that we are putting money into every year that is self-sustaining year over year. So the goal when we started this last year was to start reducing our borrowing. Last year we went down to what, $1.10 million from $1.05 million. Well, what you'll see in front of you is that this year we will be borrowing $601,200. How does that happen, you say? So when we started this, Derek and Harry and I sat down and I said, we realized that there wasn't anybody, we didn't have anybody on staff yet because we didn't have a finance director to check in to see that money was actually being spent, how projects were coming along throughout the year. And I said, I think we should just audit this. And so we had them pull data and realized there was a ton of money that had never been spent. So we paid money to borrow money, projects that then were not done, which not great, right? So when we sat down and everybody started filtering in their capital improvement requests this year, the first directive that we kind of said is, if it absolutely does not need to be done, especially if it's something to do with upgrading things in this building, hold off, because we just don't know the status of what's going to come out of our feasibility studies. And we don't, if we have to come back and add something in, fine, but let's go as minimal as we can on those things. And so the department heads did an outstanding job of being realistic in their asks. We said, things like the squads and the highway trucks, obviously, we don't want to skimp on those. But if you look at the remaining CIP from prior years column, you will see that in 2021, there was only about $7,400 left. But in 2022, there was $144,000 that was not used. In 2023, $278,550, and in 2024, yet to be spent, $417,000. So that means we have $847,000 still waiting to be spent. So then it was conversations with the department heads, and we said, anything 2022 and earlier, that money is no longer there for you to spend. We're gonna put that into Fund 45, which is our new capital fund, where we are starting to build that money that we can use year over year.
So for the 2024 CIP, there's nothing that was committed, but not yet spent?
That is, there's stuff that's committed that's not yet spent. We're not taking that money away yet. That's just a tally of where we're at year to date. Based on the $1,010,000 that was borrowed, there is still $417,422 that has not been spent.
Or committed?
It's committed.
Oh, it is committed.
All of it's committed. We don't do anything for short-term borrowing that is not committed. It is for specific projects that the department heads want to complete.
I'm using the wrong term. What I mean is that even though they haven't spent the money yet, in other words, they haven't cut a check, some service has been rendered or some.
No, not all of those projects have been completed yet, no. But we're anticipating that they will be completed this year.
So that's money that won't be available in 2025 is what I'm saying.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So,
And the direction has been given that if you do not spend your money this year, it is gone.
Okay.
It goes into then the capital fund and it's gone.
so currently, how much money do you have then in this pool from the previous years? Is it the 270?
No, it's the $847,466.
But you just said that some of that 417,000 will be spent.
It will, but it's still in there right now.
But everything up until 2024 will not be spent this year, correct? Or it is?
Well, if you look over, some of it will be spent, yes.
Okay,
So,
so they can still pull within this year from what they had previously. I'm sorry if I'm being dull here.
no, so if you look at, let's look at the sheriff, look at the sheriff line. Okay, the sheriff requested $178,000 because that's for his squads. And you follow the line over, it says use prior year's money. Because the sheriff still had all of those lines worth of money left over. So 239,551. Now he has some expenditures yet to come out of there. So in reality, we're gonna pull about $28,000 out of the capital fund to make him whole. But rather than borrow from that money, we're gonna use what was left.
Okay, that was my question. You're kind of allowing them to pull what they accumulated over the 3 years of borrowing.
Yep, and we
Okay.
kind of said we're zeroing it out after this.
Okay. that makes
Because this is not what this was designed for. This wasn't designed to build up money. This wasn't designed to carry over.
sense. Right.
This was not what this borrowing was supposed to be for. And realistically, again, we should be then putting money away every year to have our own fund that we can just do this with. We shouldn't have to be spending the $30,000 to borrow money every year. And so this is really exciting. So this year, rather than having to borrow $1,010,000, we're gonna borrow $601,200 and nobody's losing anything. We did have some requests for some really large projects, such as new air handlers for Simons to the tune of $200,000. We said, nope, we're gonna defer that at this point because there are so many unknowns. You know, the ambulance service had some large requests for a vehicle. Obviously, that's not gonna be happening this year. But at Simons, we did decide, you know what, we do need to do the sidewalks. They're a liability. They're a tripping hazard. They're a fall hazard. And so there was some money left. We can do that. In the courts area, there were a lot of things that they wanted upgraded or adjusted. We were able to do that with existing money. We didn't have to borrow money or do anything additional. So in reality, this year, the only two departments that we have to borrow for are MIS and highway. Everything else we've been able to cover with the dollars that we have left once we did the audit.
Hey Candace, the CIP for the Mobile Emergency Operations Center was under emergency management, not EMS, just in case.
Oh, sorry.
All good, no worries.
I just wanna understand the MIS line. So they're asking for 101,000 for next year, correct?
Correct.
So all of these accumulated money that they have thus far is things that is already, marked for this year?
So that 106,000 that you see for 2024, yes, that's already, there are plans for those dollars. And the 2022 money that's left, we're doing an Office 365 project. So again,
So what is that 193 on the end there then?
that's what's sitting in there right now,
Okay,
total.
Add up all the lines straight across.
well, not exactly.
Because you got that, she went under budget, she went over budget, so you've got to take $30,000 away. And that's how you get that total.
Questions for Candace
Or Larry.
or Larry?
Is the goal to not have short-term borrowing in the future, and how long do we anticipate it's gonna be?
Well, we don't know yet. Last year we put up, almost 300,000 in?
Yes.
And then we've added some since then as well. And so now this year, so last year was the first year we actually did that. I said, why don't we should have a capital fund. And so this year, through the budget process, depending on where we're at, we hope to add some more. Do I think we'll be able to completely phase out next year? Probably not. But I would hope within the next 3 years to phase out capital borrowing. Or additionally, depending on where we're at, what is our feasibility study gonna show? Where are we gonna be at? Are some of these costs still gonna be here? Are some of those costs going to be alleviated because we will have done an overhaul or an upgrade? So it's situationally dependent as well.
Moving pieces.
There are a ton of moving pieces, but the goal definitely in the next 3 to 5 years, no more short-term borrowing because we have an account that is well-funded and will consistently be so.
I like that, but I asked a dumb question. We're allowed to take tax levy money and put it in a capital fund like that and build up a fund?
Yeah.
Okay, I just had to ask.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just to give a little background on this, this is something we started doing in 2019 because we were bumping up on our levy limits. We couldn't levy any more operationally to be able to fund some of these improvements. But state law allowed us to borrow the money and then put that right on the levy and pay it back right away. So that we were able to generate additional revenue for these capital purposes. There's a list of certain things you can do it for. That's what these purposes were identified, paying for squad cars, computer improvements, things like that. So we got into the habit because our levy limits were so tight that, okay, well, we can do about $1 million a year. What can we do with that money? Which isn't a good way to plan.
Right.
And so with the relief we've gotten from shared revenue and not being quite so tight in our operational budget now, hopefully we can move away from having to borrow and just slapping that extra cost on the county property tax levy for debt service and fund it more operationally, which is a much cleaner way to do it.
So we're not actually borrowing money, we're sort of, it's like say a budgetary thing that we're sort of.
It's a budget maneuver for
Okay,
sure, yeah.
okay. So we're not going
It's,
to borrow.
we do have to go through the process of borrowing money, and as Candace has said, that costs money to do.
Right.
But we determined at the time to be able to have the flexibility to fund some of these, a couple $100,000 here and there and put an extra $500,000 into highway reconstruction. It was worth it to be able to do that.
So we're rubbing from Peter to pay Paul.
One way to look at it.
Happens. It's 2020.
But we're getting closer to not having to do that. And that's the main thing is we're planning, we're being proactive instead of reactive. That's our whole philosophy now.
Well, that's awesome. I make a motion to approve the capital improvement plan.
Motion by Ingrid, seconded by Mr. Markell. Any further discussion? What do you want the resolution to prove as presented? Is that good enough for you? Mr. Kalish?
Yeah, motion to be able to approve the capital improvement plan is presented, that's all there is.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. All right. The CIP has been approved. Moving on to number 9 to the agenda. Resolution approving the sheriff's office purchase of a new mobile and portable radios for the new radio system. Item number 9.
So I guess I'll give you a short version of where the request is coming from. Obviously, we have the new radio system incoming. Knowing that, I did an inventory of our current radio equipment at my office to figure out what would work or could be made to work on the incoming system. So what I'm looking to do now is use money that we have already borrowed, talking about capital improvement money, that I'm not using for its intended purpose. So we had borrowed enough money to purchase 3 squads this year. I purchased 2 squads. So I'm looking to use some of that remaining money then to purchase radios that'll work on the new incoming system. So like I said, I did an inventory of what we have that will work on the new system. Now I'm looking at replacing everything that won't. So I've been working with General Communications on this. We're getting special pricing for the radio equipment. It's a special pricing that we're getting because we're doing the radio project with them. So I've got, like I say, I've got my inventory done. I've got quotes back for them at the radio equipment that we're looking at getting. So now I'm just looking at shifting that borrowed money towards this project.
Got a question for Clay. You mentioned there'd be some radios that would no longer work. We're always short of radios out at the fair time. Would the ones that's no longer working be something we could use out there?
Any of the equipment that I'm phasing out, like even to some extent, like this, when I've been replacing squads, a lot of the squads that I'm replacing have radios that won't work on the new system. So we'll say in this instance, Josh gets one of my old squads. I give them that squad with all the equipment in it, and then they could turn around then and reprogram that radio to work on their channels. So yeah, another example, but yeah, we could repurpose some of those radios for the fair. Yep, they'll still be useful to us. It's just they won't operate on the radio system. So
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Manning, second by Mr. Gill. Any question by?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Minor correction on it. It says the Finance and Personnel Committee in the resolution. It's just language.
Couldn't hear.
Oh, it's just the name of our committee has changed.
Background. Finance personnel, here up on top. Yeah. Yeah, I see that. Okay, one correction, anything else? Otherwise, all those in favor of approving the resolution? Yes, sir, Mr. Carroll.
You know if there's any other radios out there besides the sheriff's that still need to be changed because of the tower project?
I can sort of answer that. So ambulance will have radios. I don't know what their inventory looks like how many they'll need to change. And if Mike is still listening, he may have a better idea of that than I do. But they have applied for a grant. It's actually a regional grant, is my understanding, and that could help fund those radios. Then again, it's a grant. We don't know that they're going to get it. But yeah, they're the only county entity that I'm aware of that will need to migrate to this new system. Highway should be able to operate on their existing radios. It's just us and an ambulance for county entities. Yep.
So from the EMS ambulance standpoint of radios, so we do have a bit of radio inventory. It has been historically best practice for us just due to budgetary constraints that we've always purchased used equipment. Most of the portable radios we currently have now are actually recycled from the Los Angeles Police Department. Our gross inventory on 800 megahertz capable radios is not in a great spot. We'll be completing our radio inventory at the end of this week to confirm what is capable on the new system. And any further recommendations on that or discussion on that will be presented to Joint Ambulance Committee at the end of this month. So I've got my communications specialist person here working on that, working through that for us now. But I won't have an exact number or grand idea until probably end of the month.
Thank you, Mike.
Perfect. Any further discussion, questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, number 9 is complete. Radios. Number 10. Discussion, possible action, rental of office space in the community services building. Number 10.
So that's on me, Mr. Chair. I was directed to prepare the agreements for the two entities that wanted to lease space in the community services building. I was unable to do so by tonight's meeting. I was able to speak with, remind me of his name, the foundation.
Great. They
Right.
actually saw me today.
And confirmed with him that my philosophy of keep it simple, stupid is going to be acceptable to him. So I don't anticipate it will take me too much time. It's simply a matter of finding that time to sit down and get it worked out. I would anticipate having it prepared by the board meeting if this committee wants to forward a recommendation to allow the rental. Otherwise, I would be willing to come back next month and present you with the language for review.
His timeline, does he have one?
He would like to be in by the second week of July, which may be tight anyway. So I can work with Mike and see what we can get done.
Committee?
Handle it. Do the KISS method.
Keep it simple. Yes. So I would entertain a motion to allow Mr. Wendell to draft, and between the administrator and Mr. Wendell, give our approval to let them go ahead and come up with the agreement.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Carroll, seconded by Supervisor Renish. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no. All right. 10 is out the door. Number 11. Review of ARPA allocations.
So this was discussed at the last meeting, wanting kind of an update. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but on our ARPA expenditures and how much was left. So at this point, we see what was allocated, what has been spent, what has not been spent. We did just get the Laval invoice, so that $590,000 will be paid out to them. So that will decrease that amount. The Tri-County Drainage Project, I believe we allocated funds and then did not need them. So we can reallocate that to another area. You know, and then we have the assessment down there, operational revenues from 23 to 24. We had anticipated needing to use some of these ARPA dollars and we didn't need to use those. So again, we have roughly $1.6 million left. We have a lot of unknowns out at the campus. We have a wage study and we have new software, all of which we can utilize some of these funds to offset. Derek, any other points that you think we should touch?
No, I think, yeah, this was requested at the last meeting just for review, so this is, you know, the most up-to-date tracker that we have. As you all know, the deadline to spend those funds is 2026. It seems like a long ways away, but it's really not. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything else to add. You did that already.
Supervisor Carroll.
That was going to be my question.
Perfect.
I see in the meantime, we've earned some interest.
Yeah. Any other questions on the ARPA dollars, where we're at with them? Job tracking, it looks like, so. Mr. Renish.
When the time comes, is that 1.6 doesn't meet criteria meet for spending some of it at the campus if so needed? You know, I know there's certain criteria that you have to follow.
It's infrastructure.
Okay.
So yes,
No action required on our part? All right. 11, moving to 12. Discussion and possible action on review, oh, we did 12. 13. Possible action, corporate council services.
Okay, so, wanted to gauge your interest on bringing corporation counsel in-house as an employee. In looking at the cost spent between contracted services and then what we are paying for our part-time corp counsel, it exceeds, or meets or exceeds what we would pay for a staff, a full-time staff, minus benefits, give or take. This year alone, year to date, we have already spent $40,000 on fees. Last year, we were somewhere around the ballpark of 69,000. Year before that, 65,000. And again, that's just for very specific contracted services. Amy Forehand does X amount of hours a week. We pay that on a consistent basis, but when it comes to having Mike, it's very specific only for certain things, where for that amount of money, if he were a staff member, we would have his undivided attention at all times, all day, every day. So, wanted to gauge the interest of bringing him on as a staff rather than a contract, because I think it would benefit the county. I think that with the volume of large projects we have going on, with the need over at Human Services, with the need in our child support area, I think it would make a lot of sense. So that's my feeling on it, but I didn't want to move forward in pursuing it until I had a chance to discuss with the group.
Now, this year, the campus must have consumed a lot of your time.
Once appointed as negotiator, it actually reduced the amount of time, because a lot of what I was doing regarding the campus was chasing all of the various communications that were occurring without any coordination, which is why I proposed that in the first place. I expect that once the reconfiguration committee begins its work, I will get busy with that again. I think we'll need to be evaluating the legalities, the potentials of all the different proposals that are coming in. But no, that was not my primary focus this year.
Would we still have to share you with the city?
Not as he comes a full-time county employee.
That's what I mean.
I mean, I would be a county employee, so that would be up to you.
And so, yeah, exact numbers. In 2021, we spent $39,725.59. In 2022, $64,495.72. 2023, $73,215.98. Year to date, we're at 40, so that number is intending to climb, I would guess. So again, at what point does it make sense to have a full-time staff rather than contracting for limited hours and paying the same amount of money? And that's where I'm just looking at efficiency and effectiveness for the needs that we have. Things are not getting less complex, they are getting more complex. Every contract that needs to be reviewed, every policy that needs to be written and reviewed, those sorts of things.
Mr. Carroll.
Sounds good, but I guess I wasn't clear on what beforehand's doing, and would that no longer be needed?
Correct.
May I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
I guess for somebody who has for 20 years done everything that the county's asked and more, the fact that this was the discussion that was not even had with me prior to being brought to the committee really upsets me. I have gone beyond what is contracted with me. I am contracted for 8 hours a week. I guarantee I put in twice that for free for the county. This was set up before I even got here as a benefit to not only the the DA's office, but to the county. Because they couldn't recruit people for my position at the DA's office to stay if it wasn't going to be a full-time position. So the position was set up for 80% for the state, 20% for the county. When I originally started in the county, all I did for that 20% was represent child support in the child support arena and the mentals. That grew to me taking on the guardianships when Ben left, and then taking on the CHIPS and TPR work. And point, I was the director of the child support agency because that's what needed to be done. Then when that was taking on more duties, went back to just being the attorney and taking these other roles. And then when they needed someone to fill in child support, that I did as much as I can with as much of time as I have. I understand the need that the county may have, but there's also a reason why having two and having a backup is important. Things happen in mentals, children's, that need immediate attention. If one person is not here, there needs to be somebody available to do that. There also comes a point when there are conflicts that one person can't handle that they need to do. So I just think that having this discussion with not talking to somebody who has done this job and has been around longer than anybody else in this room is irresponsible and very offensive, and want that to be known.
Thank you for your comments, Amy. Questions for Amy, anyone? Further discussion on this committee? Mr. Carroll.
So after hearing that, I mean, what these tasks that he's been doing within revert the dwindle then,
well, that's what we would explore. This is simply a conversation to explore moving forward. And if it is something that the board wishes me to do. Again, no decisions have been made. This is purely to decide whether or not we want to explore this option or we want to maintain status quo.
Because it needs to be explored, because budget
It's coming.
so.
But if there's no interest in going down this road, then I'm not going to spend the time to go out and get all the other job descriptions and get the data and do all of that work. If you would like to maintain the contract the way it is, paying hourly for services rendered and keeping Amy on in her current capacity.
My question would be, if you went a full-time staff, then it would be one person. We've got two now. It would be one person could handle that as a full-time, you know what I'm saying?
That remains to be seen. I'm kind of in a weird position to speak on this because I cannot contractually advocate for anything other than retaining the current contract. I can tell you that it would be extremely challenging for one person to perform all of the duties of corporation counsel. To Amy's point, for an involuntary mental commitment, from the minute the officers detain the person, you have 72 hours to get into court for the first hearing. You have 14 days after that. You need to arrange witnesses, line up the evaluators, get the reports in, ensure that those are properly filed or the case gets tossed. With guardianships, you need to work closely with HHS. That's sometimes, depending on the complexity of the case, either an hour-long meeting during the month if they're, not super complicated, and it could be, several hours. I can think of one particular case that 20+ hours this year, just me alone dealing with one individual, and we've got 100 something on guardianship and protective placement. So I alerted Amy to this conversation because I wanted her to be able to speak, because one of the reasons that I'm able to be at so many meetings and handle so many things for the county is because I don't have to be dealing with the HHS stuff. That was something that was delegated to her before my time, that I've always trusted her to handle capably and competently. I think that there are things that can be improved, but you know, that's true of anything. So could one person do it? And I guess the question would be, can I do it? I do not know that it's not in my best interest to give you a solid answer to that.
Well, I can read between the lines, and I'm just looking for, the question I have is it the most efficient decision for the county? Or what I'm hearing from both of you is that it's probably not.
I would anticipate having to work far more hours, but it would end up being the county would get more service. So right now, if I come up with a great idea to solve a problem, I can't do anything about it because I have to be concerned about good stewardship of the county's resources. That would no longer be an issue. And so, you know, what one person would have to do is delegate all of the children and youth, you know, that would be a block of every day, and then plan my evening around meetings all through the evening, and then I'd have to figure out the time to draft the documents that you'd like to review and look at all the contracts and everything. So there's a reason we have two now, and I think that putting all of it on an individual, if for no other reason, then yeah, if one individual there, they get sick or they get hit by a bus, as my favorite example, who backs them up, who has any awareness whatsoever of the various cases going on.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I'd suggest that maybe we could explore what it would look like to have a full-time employed corporation counsel, whether that means we have only one attorney or not. We shouldn't necessarily predefine, but take a look at what it would look like. It would seem that we have plenty of work to go around. So maybe it does make sense for us to still have a full-time employed corporation counsel while still maintaining a backup deputy in that role. So we still have two people, but have an employee versus a contracted service provider.
That was going to be my request as well, so thank you.
Mr. Gill.
I agree with that, and I think it's also our job to be as efficient with our resources, and we need to explore possibilities, but also try to be sensitive to the people that have been longtime employees and have done that. So, you know, I think exploring possibilities to me seems like a reasonable approach, so.
And even if it's not a money saver, if we're getting better service out of it, then that's a benefit to
It's
taxpayers.
not just about money.
Well, and backup services.
Yeah.
People need time off.
I think I have
You
my
good with
marching
that?
orders, thank you.
All right.
That's what I asked for.
14, discussion and possible action, memorandum of understanding with neighborhood housing services. Item 14.
So I don't know that we need this.
I don't think we have any action we are going.
No,
We're just not there yet, so there's further
No.
discussion.
no, I think we can skip over this.
All
one.
right. Back to item 15. Like discussion and possible action, payment method for county board supervisors.
So this is just the initial introduction on this. So we were at the COWS workshop, and it was brought to our attention that in statute 59.13, it states that the number of days for which compensation and mileage may be paid a committee member in any year, except members of committees appointed to have charge of the erection of any county building, and except as otherwise provided by law, are limited as follows. in counties containing less than 25,000 population to 20 days, not more than 10 of which shall be for services on any one committee. So essentially, what that means is you all are supposed to be salaried because you exceed the 20 days of payment. And so we need to start discussing and thinking about that because I do not think that we are in compliance with the statute.
Other counties doing it wrong.
Yep. There were a lot of wide eyes when that happened, when that discussion was had. And so what we are prepared to do is start compiling data to see what the average payout is. Derek does have a lot of that, but there are some people that claim no per diems and nothing. And there are others that claim for a lot of things. So
I don't have the actual totals, but I just looked at the number of meetings, literally number of meetings that were paid in 2023 and 2024. So the average range of meetings for various supervisors ranged from 7 to 78, I think is the range. And in 2023, we had 324 meetings in January through May. We're at about 293 so far, so we're halfway through the year. So, 20-some difference from last year, but the number of meetings are per diem was paid for in 2023, what we're at 2024.
So we will gather some more data and bring it back, but we wanted you all to be aware. I do have copies of the statute if you would like to take one. But again, totally shocking, a little bit eye-opening, kind of one of those things that, oh boy, I guess we need to look at this.
So we're gonna be part of the wage study then.
A little bit different ways.
Yeah,
I always wondered why, if you was, at the roll call, knowing they were present, maybe we come up with some kind of average on a per diem, which I never turned in. And they just paid knowing that he was at that meeting.
But if we're paying based on, you can't exceed payment for 20 days, so if you have 4 meetings on one day, doesn't matter, it's one day, you get paid, that counts as a
I
day.
get that, but I mean, if we change it for a salary, and rather than us have to turn in.
Right,
I'm just looking
yes.
for the simplest way, that we was at that meeting, that is just automatic.
Well, if you're salaried, yeah, you just get paid whether or not you show up.
Oh,
Oh
well.
Whole other kind of work.
it doesn't last real long.
So that we got a year slide a little easier.
Well, I thought it followed the same process as we did with allowing that way, so it's very easy to track if that's the case.
Yep,
I would say more information, bring it back.
yep, so it's just information, again, more stuff we're working on.
Anybody else with further questions on our soon to become salary payment? Number 16, discussion, possible action, reading of resolutions at county board meetings.
I will take this one, Mr. Chair. So, I just want to know, we have a campus configuration meeting that's supposed to start in 6:30, so.
Very long.
This, I spoke with Chair Kirk about the idea of me not reading the resolutions as I have. The county boards, you all have them before you on this thing called an iPad. There's also this thing called the internet in which they're all available. They're now numbered, which they weren't before, so I was just curious if we could maybe shave off 5 minutes of me reading what you already have before you and discussing the resolution without me reading it. That's it.
I didn't want to make that decision independent of input from the board, so we brought it here, see what everybody thinks.
Not good for the media.
Not good for the media.
That was my thing. What about somebody that's just watching TV?
Originally, back in the past, the clerk used to have to read the agenda before we discontinued that practice a number of years ago. Other thoughts? What do you think? And Derek does not read the whole resolution. He reads the now therefore be it resolved. And then if it's incredibly detailed with facts and figures, defers to the printed copy for that.
Good point by Mr. Perry. Joanne, your thoughts? Any thoughts?
Oh, radio's different than
Right.
visual.
You read you have access.
I go online and look at the, follow along. I do like the fact that, I mean, I remember coming to meetings and the whole resolution was read. And I'm like, oh, well, now that he cut it down, that helps too.
Anyway, Rod, any ideas on how we could remedy that? I know we've got another meeting starting in now.
Well, the way you're doing it is
Do you know how many listeners, viewers you have? Table it, well, not table it, but back, Mr. Derek. Okay, we'll leave it alone for now. We can always revisit it. And I'll check with other counties, but I believe they don't read them either, so.
Andy Phillips had said that not many other counties do.
Yep. 17, discussion review cost sharing revenue formula.
So this was at the request of Supervisor Gill. And so there's a very limited piece of this entire statute, which is 79.02, that talks about shared revenue distribution. But again, it's a very kind of ambiguous formula that we really don't fully understand. But we did put the entire statute in there for your review.
Thank you, and I think it's got huge impact on all of the stuff that we're talking about here.
It does.
And for us not to understand how they're doling out this money, I think it's not a good place to be.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone fully understands it. I think it's intended, the state likes to hide behind formulas and things and not fully explain how or why they come to how they're funding things or how they're distributing, which is unfortunate for us as counties sometimes.
The biggest limitation on its impact before was limited to the increase in net new construction on your county's property value. Not just whether your property values went up, but net new construction. And we always had to wait in nervous anticipation for the state to tell us what minuscule percentage Richland County had. And we, over the last few years of the old formula, we saw maybe an additional 20,000 or so we could tax based on net new construction, which was, I'm looking at our total tax levy was a negligible percent.
You read it word for word and you tell us what you think. We have a second Steve Carroll on it.
Very valuable.
Thank you. Very good ideas.
And I will do some additional research with WCA and just see if they have anything else out there that more clearly defines it, but
I spoke to the budget guy about that too, and he said the same thing.
yeah, it's really ambiguous.
Legislative, that does it.
Yep.
But he said no.
Yep, exactly.
Any other points on that? Otherwise, we'll move to 18. Discussion, yeah? Or do we, this is gonna take a while. Do we want to? Well, everybody,
How fast can you be?
it's all up to you.
Okay, I think Larry can get it done.
all right. Talk about Pine Valley Community Village 2023 audit.
Anybody need a hard copy?
Is it in our folder? There it is.
So Pine Valley's budget, their audit was presented to the Pine Valley Committee, but it's never really been fully presented to the executive committee or to the board. So this is just to increase that transparency, make sure everybody's getting the information. So I've asked Larry to just do an overview of what the auditors presented.
This is just a summary of the audit. Their audit's done a little earlier than ours, so they already got their 2023 audit issued. So I'm just gonna go through it just a little bit. First slide here on page number 2 this is their balance sheet. This is their assets. Balance sheet is like a picture of time. This is as of 12/31/2023. So this is a picture of time as of that date. You can see I just highlighted some of the things that kind of want to talk about. You could look at their cash. Actually, their cash from in 2023 went up by about $700,000, which is good news. The receivables went down by about $400,000. The accounts receivable are virtually from the rooms, Medicare, Medicaid, those types of things. They went down to that. That's an asset, so you would think that would be bad.
The cash going up is good, that's an increase in asset. The accounts receivable going down is actually good, because that's actually collecting their accounts receivable in a more timely fashion. So they actually did a better job of collecting their accounts receivable. They may have a little bit less of accounts receivable, but it's a better job of collecting. That's just a couple of things on the assets. On the other side of the balance sheet is the liabilities. There we go. It's just a couple of things that I'd like to point out. This is the liabilities. These are firstly what the debts, the accrued liabilities, the payables, those types of things are what liabilities are. I've highlighted a couple of things just to point out that we paid about $1 million worth of debt last year off from Pine Valley, and we're going to pay about $1 million of debt again this year. So we're on track for paying about $1 million a year off their debt. Yeah. If you guys have any questions, just please feel free to ask. This is just a high level. This is 80,000 square feet above, so it's really high level. So if you got questions, please let me know. Again, this is the income statement, revenues, expenses, and changes in that position. Their total operating revenues, as we can see, they had a great job. Their total operating revenues were up about 750,000 in 2023 versus 2022, which is excellent. Unfortunately, their operating expenses, mainly attributable to the nursing services, were up about 1.4 million. So their increase in their operating expenses went up about 1.4. Their increase in revenues went up about 748,000. That left them with a net operating loss in 2023 of about 968,000, which is about 668,000 than they were the year before. And mainly it's due to those two equations that the revenue did not increase as much as the expenses. Any questions on that? And if you go down to on the bottom here, if you go back to that slide, sorry. If you look at the bottom where it says transfers, that's virtually what the county puts in. That's what the county subsidizes for their payments for the Pine Valley. Virtually what the county puts in. You can see the county sent them for 2023. The county sent them about 1.47 million, and Pine Valley sent us back about 300,000. So in 2023, the county put cash into there about 2 million. And that happens every year. Virtually what we do is we pay the debt payment, the principal payment, and then Pine Valley refunds us what they feel is appropriate out of their cash fund. And that is pretty consistent. I believe every year we budget that out. It has been increasing. So I will say I give Pine Valley credit for that because they have been increasing that contribution, but still that's out the approximately $1 million a year. This next one is virtually Pine Valley operating income loss per resident day. I just put this in there because you can kind of see this is what the actual loss is per day per resident of Pine Valley. And you can see as it goes back in 2022, we had a very good year. As you can see, and I think increases here, so she correct me if I'm wrong, but 2022, I think we got a Medicare increase and our expenses did not catch up with our Medicare increase. So if you look at we got a revenue increase without an increase in expenses.
Yeah, the Medicaid increase that goes from July 1st, so July 1st of 2020, it wasn't the whole year, but then it's carrying forward as well into 2022, 2023.
Thank you. So part of it was Medicare, and part of it was just hold on the cost of the expenses.
Yes.
As you can see, it did. Our revenue went up to $394 per room in 2022, and our expenses only went up about $8, and our revenue went up about $60. So that's where we get my head. Again, I know this is quick, and I know everybody wants to get out of here, so I'm just doing it quick. If you got any questions, please feel free to ask. Comparative operating expenses and revenues, you can see that the revenues are going up, but you can see that the revenues are in orange. You can see that the revenues are in blue, and the expenses are in orange. You can see that they're continuing going up. The revenues continue going up, but the expenses continue climbing and continue climbing in excess of the revenue. So they've been doing a good job at increasing the revenues. Unfortunately, the expenses have been keeping it all right up with them. So I know that they're working on their occupancy now with increasing those revenues even more. So hopefully those will come around and make that switch. Last one's just kind of a pie chart, kind of breaking down the revenues, by the, source. Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid 52%, Medicare is 24, private pay 14. As you can see in there's the dollars associated with them all. Yes, sir.
And on the operating income or loss per resident per day, those expenses, is the debt service in on that, or is that separate?
No.
That's only operating. Okay, that's each side.
Next.
All right, and then the last one, let's go to the next slide, which is the operating expenses for 2023. As you can see, 56% of our expenses is nursing services alone. So that's a big part of our budget expenses, and that's where we see the most increase over the last couple of years. And I think that part of it's just trying to find help, as we all know, when that's in Toronto. So I think that the wage study is going to do them just as much good as it's going to do everybody else in the county. Next one, this is kind of a bad news slide. Supplemental payments are payments that the state has been giving to county nursing homes in order to help them stay afloat. It's been a supplemental payment above and beyond what we normally get in our Medicare. As you can see in 2018 and 2023, that it's going from a 887,000 down to 103,000 last year, which about of the 103,000, we're gonna have to pay back about 87,000, which is gonna net us, well, it's gonna net us about 58,000 because we actually get 143,000. So out of that 103, we're gonna pay back about 85,000 because of the estimate was a little different than what the actual payment. So virtually the supplemental payments have went from 900,000 down to zero in the course of that many years, 6 years.
Can I speak to that
Yes.
just briefly too? With the supplement payments, it's like the more money you lost in their formula, then the more you would get from SP payments. Well, with the higher Medicaid rates, they're doing away more with the SP payments because the county facilities aren't losing as much per Medicaid day as what they were in the past before the rate increase.
Trace got a very good point. There's no reason to lose more money to get a little bit of supplement payment. So that's not what we're trying to do. We're not going to lose more money to get more of a supplement payment. We're going to try to make money and get less of a supplement payment. But this does show where the supplement payments are going, because it is a pot of money that virtually is for all the nursing homes that are company rent. Last page. I'm just going to look at just one of the struggles I think that they have, and I think that they are really hard looking at. You can see these are occupancies, rooms. And I look at it, this is like a motel, if you're looking at a motel, it's like the occupancy percentage of the motel. And if you get up to that second set of numbers there in that second chart, you go from 2018 about 94 to 95% occupancy, we don't have 20% occupancy. So you lose about a 14% occupancy in that 6 years, that's a killer, I think. That's part of their revenue problem. I know that Teresa, you guys are working on that right now, trying to get those rooms filled, so. Questions?
Nobody with questions for Mr. Carroll, go ahead.
My understanding has been that staffing is the bottleneck for but let's see.
I don't believe that. I think we have a whole, we got probably 21 rooms on the school side. Yeah, I think that we have adequate staffing that we could facilitate.
Well, and they have done the contract and staffing when needed. I think that it depends a lot on the census hospital, and I think they're seeing lately the hospitals aren't having as high a census, which feeds our admissions. The CBRF does often feed into the SNP, you know, they start there and they may come over, but.
I know they have staffing issues, and I think everybody has staffing issues contribute to occupancy.
We haven't had to turn people away because of lack of staff.
Good question, Steve. Any further questions from Larry? Thank you, Larry, for the quick update. Moving to number 19, Board of Adjustment appointments. Are we doing anything with that tonight? No?
No, so we need to make some appointments to the Board of Adjustments. Derek has put out a call for any interested board members to please let him know. Otherwise, we do need to look out for some citizen appointees because we need at least 2 additional on our board of adjustments.
Thank you. Correspondence, any of those? Anybody? Mr. Derek? No. Future agenda items? Anything from the committee?
Mr. Chair, so it was brought to my attention in a recent review that in our previous committee structure, the Rules and Strategic Planning Committee was specifically designated as the Ethics Board per our ethics ordinance. That language is not found in our current committee structure. There is an implicit assignment of those responsibilities to this committee. However, I do think it would be beneficial to make clear and to just spell it out, to adopt a resolution at some point in the future, specifically assigning that responsibility to this committee or whichever committee the board feels appropriate.
Very good. One item for the agenda next. Yeah, right. If nothing else, I would have a job for Supervisor Manning. Motion by Manning, second by Renish, who spoke up first. All those in favor of joining until next month signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed. Nobody opposed, adjourning. We will take a break for those that are going to stick around.